The growth of Charlotte, North Carolina is not surprising, and as one of the top 10 fastest growing cities, you could probably expect that prices and population are both rising pretty similarly. Now, that's not to be something to be worried about. In fact, there are some incredible opportunities that are still available here in Charlotte that are going to make the most sense probably for you. In this video, I'm going to share with you the real opportunity. That's right. We're going to talk about the top 6 fastest growing neighborhoods and towns around the Charlotte area. That's right, the outskirts of Charlotte are where you're going to find opportunity not only for space, but we're seeing more new construction homes going up, more inventory available, and you're going to be shocked to find not only the growth rate, but the future opportunity of some of the values of the properties in these areas. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to know which towns have the biggest upsides for growth, opportunity, and potential equity in the coming years. If you've been looking for everything about Charlotte, North Carolina and the upstate of South Carolina, you've hit the right channel. Hit that subscribe button and be the first to know about the upcoming changes to the Charlotte area and market. I'm 𝗖𝘀, your Charlotte, North Carolina real estate expert, and every single day we're getting calls, texts, emails, Zoom invites from people who are just like you. We really do. So if that's you, drop into the description below. All of our contact information is there. Whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days from now across the world, across the country, or just across town, we're here to make your move exactly what you want it to be. So give us a shout. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity going on in Charlotte. And over the last couple of years, we've seen some massive booms in our population. Now, while we are still the 14th largest city in the United States, we are gaining traction on that list pretty quickly. We have about 150 people a day moving here to the Charlotte region, which includes as far north as Mooresville and down even into the Fort Mill, South Carolina area and outwards. Now, when we look at the Charlotte metro area, it does encompass out to Gastonia and Concord up into Mooresville. And the reason for that is we consider the Charlotte region anywhere where people are still coming into Charlotte to go to work. Now, the growth that we've seen over the last couple of years has upsides and its downsides. Biggest downside is, well, we started running out of houses. That's right. Inventory levels did get a bit more constricted. And what we're seeing now is a lot more homes are starting to hit the market, especially as builders have upped production over the last couple of years. In addition to that, we're also seeing more of a neighborhood sprawl. People are moving out of Charlotte, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because they want more opportunity, better pricing, more land, and more areas to spread out. That's right. Not everybody wants to be right on top of their neighbor. So when talking about spreading out, let's hit our first town with some of the greatest opportunity for equity growth and growth in general in the next couple of years. Denver, North Carolina. Yes, that's right. Sorry, Colorado. We have a Denver too. It's not nearly as big as yours. Denver, North Carolina sits to the west side of Lake Norman. In fact, it flanks the entire west side of Lake Norman and offers a lot of potential for lakefront properties. However, that is actually not its main population draw. In fact, the opportunity there is that you can get some beautiful homes, quite larger than some other areas, for an incredible price. Now, the Denver area has been on the rise when it comes to population growth. Denver actually grew by about 24% in its population between 2020 and 2025, which is pretty significant. Now, when you take a look at the map, Denver is actually quite large as well. So you can see that even if there's a large population growth, you're probably not going to notice. That's kind of part of the draw. Now, while many areas of Charlotte have started to become a little bit more stagnant over the last 2 years, as the market has not been at its greatest. In fact, the least amount of homes have sold in 2024 and 2025 since 1995, and that's nationwide. Yes, we're all in it together, folks. But Denver seems to have outwitted this. In fact, although some of the areas around Charlotte have increased their valuations or average sales price anywhere between 2 and 5% year over year, Denver actually increased it by 12.5%. Currently, the median sales price in Denver is about $565,000. Now, if we take a look back over the last 10 years, we've seen that the median sales price in Denver for houses has actually increased about 108%. That's about a 7.8% increase in value each year for 10 years. Now, granted, we know it's not always a straight line. There's ups and downs. And yes, there was some major growth, which we have to account for in 20 and 21, like the rest of the country. Even with those being taken out of the equation, we can still see that there's been very steady, very strong growth in the Denver market. And based upon that, and based upon what we're seeing happen here in the next few months, I don't think we're going to see it slow down anytime soon. Now, the strong growth over the last 5 years especially is also signaling that there's going to be continued growth over the next few years. So where's the opportunity? Well, it's a good time, like any time, to get in. But in an area like Denver, if you get in and purchase a home sooner than later, you are going to reap the benefit of equity, because as population size increases and as things grow, you're going to see an increase overall in home values. Now, another upside to Denver is being on the west side of the lake. It's a little bit quieter. The east side on Lake Norman is a lot more busy. You've got I-77 and some of the larger cities and towns over in that area. Denver tends to be a little bit more tranquil, a little bit more rural feeling, and a little bit more small town. So if you want the lake appeal without the busyness and the traffic, Denver's probably where you want to look. In a nutshell, if you want to be lake adjacent, have really great property values that are still increasing year over year, space, water access, but without those premiums you're going to pay on the east side of the lake, then this is definitely the spot for you. Now, the next town with great opportunity on our list is Mooresville, North Carolina. I was actually speaking with a client of mine who's relocating to the Mooresville area, and what caught her eye was the opportunity for growth and how quaint the town still is. So let's talk about it. Mooresville has grown quite a bit over the last few years. In fact, Mooresville actually saw 30% growth between 2020 and 2022, which is quite substantial. And that growth has certainly increased. Now, while the growth rate has slowed a little bit from that 20 to 22 time period, we still are seeing large percentages of growth in the area year over year. Now, one of the major draws for Mooresville, it is considered Race City, USA. That's right. This is where many race companies, in fact, 60 or more racing companies actually call home for their headquarters. Now, this is everything from Formula One to NASCAR, you name it, there is a connection close to them in Mooresville. Now, with that being said, it's not just race car drivers and their companies that are flocking to Mooresville, but people that are still wanting a quaint little town with a big vibe. That's exactly what Mooresville has to offer. With a large percentage of the town actually touching Lake Norman and providing a lot of lakefront properties, there's not just million-dollar mansions in Mooresville. In fact, it's also become one of the more affordable towns to move to, with builders building out in Mooresville, going both north, east, and south of Mooresville to more available areas where there's additional farmland, etc. We're seeing that there are not just the large luxury builders going to Mooresville, but also properties that are going still in the 400s and 500s. Now, we're talking potential basement lots with 5 bedrooms, not just teeny little ranches. That being said, this has been a major draw for people who are looking to get into their first home, maybe even their second, for a more reasonable value and have way more space than they can find here in the Charlotte market. Now, a lot of the folks that are moving to Mooresville are actually coming from Charlotte and moving up north. And the major downside to Mooresville is, of course, traffic. I know, I'm gonna say it, it is the only thing that's bad with Mooresville. If you are still working in the Charlotte market, it is a bit of a commute to get in, because I-77 can be a bit of a bear. However, it could be worth the trade-off of the lifestyle of this cute little town with the expansion that's still happening. Now, over the last year-over-year analysis from 24 to 25, we actually saw that the median home value increased by about 4%, 3.9. Now, with that being said, it's actually outpacing some of the other areas around Charlotte, which only grew by about 2% in some areas. So what is that telling us? Well, with not only the population increase, but also seeing that year over year, we're still seeing growth, even outpacing other more popular areas or seemingly popular areas. This is showing us that there's a strong future for equity and growth in the Mooresville area in the coming years. The median home value currently in the Mooresville area is about $525,000, which is pretty affordable for most families because, of course, there's a little bit above and a little bit below. In addition to this, Iredell County, which is the county that Mooresville sits in, is actually projected to be Charlotte's fastest growing county or surrounding county between 2025 and 2050. So if you have the opportunity to get in ahead of the rush and get opportunity to grow that equity, you can be in a really great position if you get into Mooresville now or within the next few years and see that equity grow and still be able to get a house with a reasonable value. The next town on our list is Concord, North Carolina. For those of you coming from California, it's not Concord. We actually call it Concord. So if you're listening to your GPS, you know that it was actually recorded in California, because I say Concord. It's really Concord. Anyway, off my soapbox for a minute. Let's talk about this town. Now, Concord has been known as one of the up-and-coming towns for the longest time, and a lot of people are saying, did it already come? It's still growing. One of the biggest unknowns about Concord when people are first looking at it is how vast this town truly is. In looking at a map, you're going to see that the city is here, but if you truly look at the entirety of the town, it spans a very, very long way. In fact, we don't live too far from there. My husband was going to meet somebody in Concord. He came home 2 hours later. I said, where'd you go? He said, I went there and I went straight back. That's how deep into Concord you could be driving. Now, with that being said, this still remains one of the most affordable towns in the outskirts of Charlotte, with still reasonable drive times if you work in Charlotte. So let's talk about the median home value. Median home value in Concord is about $359,000. Now, this is why it is so attractive for first-time home buyers, investors alike, because there is a lot of opportunity here. Now, over the last 12 months, we saw over 2,000 single-family home sales on the open market. For a town the size of Concord, that's actually pretty substantial. Now, I will note that while Concord's growth from a median price point standpoint has been a little bit slower than that of Mooresville or Denver, it still has very steady growth, which is what we want to look for. For many people who want opportunity and affordability, it's not necessarily about how fast is it going to grow and jumping onto the fastest growth rate when it comes to home values. Sometimes it's about just making sure you're lining up with something that's going to hold its value and become a growth steady pattern. And that's what Concord brings. Now, some major changes that are happening around this area, however, is the pushing out of people coming out of Charlotte. Now, as the demand increases in Concord, we've already seen this over the last year, we're going to see property values start to increase. In addition to that, the Harrisburg area, which is a town that flanks Concord, actually doubled in size over the last few years, and many of those people are starting to lean into Concord as well. So the major attractors in Concord: great home values, steady increases, steady growth, not too many people coming there, but it's starting to grow a lot faster, and you have a lot of convenience for amenities, as well as you're really close to Charlotte, the airport, the malls, anything you'd possibly need to access, all from a place that is extremely affordable. The next town that has some of the biggest opportunity, I just mentioned it, but Harrisburg, North Carolina. Now, Harrisburg is a beautiful town that sits to the east of Charlotte, just on the outer belt line on 485. And what's the draw for this town? Well, in fact, the town actually doubled in population over the last 10 years, which is crazy to think about because you wouldn't even notice as you're driving through the town. Reason being, there's so much open space. Now, the town has been beautifully designed in a sense of you have plenty of residential neighborhoods, but they are not all cookie cutter and they're not all clear cut. I know many of you know what I'm talking about with that. In fact, there are beautiful, manicured, mature neighborhoods that run all through the Harrisburg area. So the major draw, well, one, it sits right on the border of Charlotte. That means that you're going to have decent commute times, but still have the opportunity to have much larger property sizes. We're talking quarter acre or more for most developments, not these teeny little boxes that we see sometimes in Charlotte. But you're also going to see a lot of affordability. In 2025, the median sales price in Harrisburg was $470,000. And this is actually up 1.5% year over year from last year. Now, some of you might be saying, that's not much of a growth. Well, remember, we are in probably one of the worst markets since 1995. And yet we are not seeing a detraction in value. We're still seeing growth. And that's what we want to see in these towns, is growth, not only in population, but in the actual valuations of homes. Trust me, no one wants another 20% increase on their home valuation, especially when it comes tax time. So a little bit of steady growth is actually a good thing. So the reason Harrisburg has hit this list as an opportunity location is because of some constraints that most people don't know about. In fact, Harrisburg would probably have far more developments, new construction, and opportunities shaping this town much sooner, except there has been some major infrastructure constraints. That comes to sewer systems. That's right, they actually had to improve the sewer treatment plant to make sure they could accommodate more homes and more population, which is what actually slowed down its rapid growth over the last 10 years. In addition to that, the widening of roads and creating more avenues for people to actually get in and get out is part of the reason why Harrisburg actually has stalled a bit. So why is that an opportunity? Well, if you can get in sooner than later, you're going to reap the benefit of the growth that's going to happen around you from infrastructure like sewers and water systems, all the way to new additional roads and better pathways to get exactly where you need to go. Now, while the numbers are constantly changing, what I can tell you is there are 1,000 or more, that's right, 1,000 or more new construction homes in the pipeline ready to roll once everything gets finalized and the infrastructure is done. So if you're looking for that rising star suburb, the area that's going to pop, Harrisburg might be a spot to look. Our next town for major growth and opportunity is Monroe, North Carolina. Now, I know, I say Monroe sometimes, some people say Monroe. It just depends where you're from. We're gonna roll with it. But there's not really a right or wrong way, although someone will debate this on my comments. Anyway, Monroe, North Carolina, let's talk about it. Monroe was once a town that nobody wanted to live in. And when I say that, yes, people lived there, but it seemed that it was so difficult to reach because 74, which is the road that connects it into Charlotte, had so much traffic that it was honestly a bear to live in the area. Now that we have the bypass, the area has started to explode. New construction, population growth, and in fact has become a center, which is crazy, for aviation. That's right, that is one of its main industries, aviation, and they do have an airport nearby. With the amount of new construction and new homes that are being developed in the area, we're actually starting to see a much higher increase year over year in the population growth. In addition to that, one of the biggest attractors is the fact that as it's more of an up and coming area, you're going to get homes that are far more affordable, including new construction. Many of the new construction offerings have homes in the 400s to 500, as well as of course in your 700 and 800 if you want that as an option. But they have a lot of new construction properties that offer beautiful communities, easy access, and low prices. Now, the median home value in Monroe is about $375,000, and that is certainly up from 2023, which was about $270,000. Now, one of the other things that's pivoting in this area is that previously, back in 2023, as a comparison, home ownership rates were between 58 to 60%. That percentage is actually going up, meaning there's less people renting, more people owning, which is actually going to continue to increase property values. Monroe is the perfect area if you are somebody who wants a little bit more of a chill, laid-back lifestyle, a little more southern comfort kind of a lifestyle. Also, if you were looking for a little bit more affordability. This town could be a great opportunity for a stepping stone, those that are moving up into their next phase of life and owning their first home, or those that are looking for maybe a downsize and a bit more affordability because you don't need that big house anymore. Either way, as time goes on, accessibility to the area and the things that are coming to the area, such as shopping, dining, and of course population, are going to rise. The nice thing is we're going to see steady increases in home valuations over the coming years. Now, the last up and coming town may not be something that's ever been on your radar. I know you've heard of Fort Mill, South Carolina, and Rock Hill, South Carolina, and maybe even 𝗖cie in Indian Land. However, have you ever looked at York, South Carolina? Let's talk about it. York, South Carolina sits to the west of Charlotte, actually southwest, just over the Catawba River. In fact, York touches so closely to Lake Wylie, but not quite. The town of Lake Wylie is quite small. It sits right to the west of it. So what is the opportunity in this location? I'll tell you, it comes down to affordability and opportunity for growth, especially when it comes to land. Now, as I mentioned, one of the things we do look at when it comes to growth rate and what we expect to see in the future has to do with the increases in sales prices in an area. Now, York is still considered a more rural location, and yes, you have a little bit more of a drive to get into Charlotte if that's where you're going to be working and doing a lot of your daily activities. However, you are so close to so many amazing areas that you might actually find yourself not leaving York hardly at all. And when we're talking about median prices and the increase in homes, in 2025, we saw that the median home price in York was $325,000. Yes, that is much lower than many of the other numbers we've already reviewed here in this video. Here's the kicker. This price is up 5.9% year over year from 24 into 25. That is a big move, especially when we're taking a look at some of the other towns that we just discussed. Now, another major pivot that we're seeing in York has to do with the number of properties sold. As I mentioned, 24 and 25 have been rather slow for home sales across the country. And while some of the other areas in and around Charlotte and in South Carolina have seen some stagnation and sometimes lesser homes sold year over year, well, they actually saw more. In fact, just last month, there was actually a 10% increase from the previous year. That's right, in a year that was slower in most areas of the country and even in Charlotte, York actually saw an increase in home sales. Now, the town of York is pretty broad and it actually encompasses a lot of the county of York. So that's right, there's York County and then the town of York in South Carolina. They're very similar and almost one and the same. Now, given how broad this town is, there are multiple zip codes. Specifically in the zip of 29745, we actually saw a major increase in the median home sales price. Between January and July of 2025 in this particular area, we actually saw a median home value of $422,000. Now, yes, this is higher than the median in the entire city, the entire town, but again, there are hubs that are a little bit more expensive and sometimes offer a little bit more when it comes to square footage. These are things to be on the lookout for. One of the biggest reasons why people are starting to flock to the area and why the population has started to rise and we're seeing increases in home values, not only again is there more opportunity area to be built, but we're also seeing more builders look into this opportunity for more affordable homes. So as the availability for homes rises, the affordability is there, we see an increase in population and overall we're gonna see growth. So if you are wanting to get in ahead of where everybody else already is, this may be one of the best places to be. While I highlighted the top 6 areas that you might want to take a closer look at when it comes to opportunity now and into the future, there are so many markets and pockets here in the Charlotte area that are going to offer not only opportunity for growth and equity, but also convenience, lifestyle, cost of living, and of course, overall better life. So if you've been thinking about moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, but maybe these areas aren't quite for you or don't match what you're looking for, there are more, and I'd be happy to tell you more about it. As I mentioned, I'm 𝗖𝘁, your Charlotte, North Carolina real estate expert, and every day we're really getting calls, texts, emails, even people setting up Zoom invites on my calendar, and we're here to help you. So if that's you, drop into the description below. All of our contact information is there, whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days from now, across the world, across the country, or you're just thinking about moving across town or maybe out of town. We're here to make your move everything you want it to be. I look forward to talking to you soon, and until our next time, I look forward to showing you around town. So you're making the move. There's a lot of videos that you can be watching, like this one right here, or maybe even this one. Really either one of these, but honestly, watch both of them because they're going to help you make the move. Go ahead, pick one. They're both really good.